So, jumping into the book, the content of the book. So throughout the book, you explain that there is nothing wrong with Christianity itself in Europe, but more wrong with its churches, right? And on a similar note, you describe how Europeans have a different mindset with the rest of the world, and that their unique personalities and values play a role in the continuous decline of Christianity in Europe. It occurred to me that such Europeanness that you keep on mentioning in the book is something that is deep-rooted in the Europeans, and it's hardly changeable. So how would a complete reintroduction of Christianity and churches be possible?
You have asked me about 5 questions, 5 big questions. Let me break them down one by one. One of the questions you asked was, it has to do with the relationship between Christianity and the church. And the question is, if they are one and the same, whether the church is Christianity and whether Christianity is the church. And my view is that the church exists for Christianity, to represent it, to preach it, to help people believe it, and to be the voice of Christian faith. Nonetheless, the church is not necessarily Christianity. As a result, it is possible for people to be Christians without being part of a church. Also, it is possible for Christianity to be preserved blamelessly, even when churches are in shambles, churches are suffering, or churches are having a tough time, or even in decline or in moral corruption. Throughout 2,000 years of church history, there have been many instances of church under persecution, church in poverty, church in suffering, church in moral corruption, church under theological compromise, challenges of heresies, false teachings, and what have you. 2,000 years of Christianity has also seen 2,000 years of the ups and downs of the churches. There are times when churches thrived, churches were alive and growing and active and very healthy and productive, but also there were times when churches were declining, weak. And so the important theological question in Europe is Christianity itself in decline or churches in decline? Just because people do not go to church, church attendance is very low, below 5% of the population, 4%. Even those people go to church twice a year, Christmas and Easter. So the question is, in Europe, is Christianity itself in decline or churches in decline? And I believe churches are in greater decline. But because churches are in decline, Christianity is in decline also, because we just cannot separate the two. When people stop going to churches, when churches don't play a major role in the spiritual lives of people, obviously their faith will suffer. I haven't seen a Christian person who doesn't go to church and yet has a vibrant, healthy faith. Most of strong Christians, faithful Christians, have very healthy church life. So, so back to your question, what happened in Europe? Why do we say that Christianity is in decline in Europe? The most immediate answer is that churches have been in decline. Churches have not been able to meet up with the changes occurring in society, changes in culture, changes, the challenges of secularism, changes in secular morality, and churches just could not keep up with these changes in the latter half of the 20th century. So people have become very modern, and they've become postmodern, but churches are still dwelling in the Middle Ages. They're still archaic. They use archaic languages. They use old methods. They make old presumptions. And such ministry style just cannot bring the modern people back to the faith, and such archaic method just cannot present the messages of Jesus Christ to this generation in a meaningful and persuasive way. And so that's why I say Christianity doesn't have a problem, but churches have a problem. Churches have not been effective. They have not been very successful at winning people. Jesus told Peter, "I will make you a fisher of men." Church is supposed to be a fisher of man, but European churches, or churches in many parts of the world in the 20th century, in the 21st century, have not been effective fishers of man. That's why people have been moving away from churches in large numbers. And back to your another question about the Europeanness. I think Europeans will hate me when I keep saying these things when I'm not a European. But sometimes it takes an outsider to take a good look at oneself. For example, we cannot look at ourselves objectively. It requires somebody else, an outsider, third person, to see what we cannot see on our own. And so what I mean by Europeanness, Europeans will object. Europe is a big continent of more than 30 countries. You can't generalize. You can't generalize that all Europe is like this or like that. I agree. Nevertheless, we still make generalizations about Asia or Africa or America, South America, Australia. And even though Europe is a large continent with many nations and many historical experiences, nonetheless, it's still the old world. It's still the old world, and it's the first continent that established the Christian civilization, from all the way from Russia to Spain, Italy, all over Europe. It's the old world that established the Christian civilizations before the rest of the world even knew that Christianity existed. Europe enjoyed the pinnacle of the Christian civilizations in the Middle Ages. They already experienced these things. And yet, after 1,500 years, when Christianity was spread to Europe, to Germany, France, and about 1,500 years ago. 2,000 years if you include the Roman Empire. After 2,000 years have passed, Christ is not in the hearts of European people. And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about going back to the heydays of the Christian civilization of the Middle Ages, and when kings and queens were the heads of church, and when Columbus sailed with the sail of the cross, and they conquered the new worlds with the cross, and everything had religious undertone, and the culture was Christian, and you couldn't get married if you were not a church member. You couldn't get buried if you were not a church member, and the church governed culture and education and the law and politics. And I'm not advocating that we should return to those days. Those days are gone. Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing that those days are gone. We don't want to go back to those days. We want people to have the freedom of religion. We want people to have the freedom to choose, freedom to believe or not to believe, and if they believe, to understand why they believe. If they don't believe, at least to be able to say why they don't believe, so that we can have free, lively discussions about these things. I'm not trying to force religion on anybody. It's impossible to force it on anybody, but we can talk about it. We can have dialogue. We can have a free marketplace of ideas. People go to schools to discuss ideas, and why can't we discuss about religion and ultimate questions, and about the Bible, about Christ, and what I mean by Europeanness is that instead of presuming, just because Europe has this rich and long tradition of Christianity, they can't presume that as a result they are Christians now. Whether one is a Christian or not is determined by, do you confess Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? If you say, yes, you are a Christian, if you hesitate, you still have to find out more about Christianity. So, what I'm interested is not building Christian culture or Christian dominance or Christian hegemony. What I'm concerned about is presenting the gospel to this contemporary generation who may never heard the gospel before. Present the gospel to them, give them opportunities to hear it, think about it, and believe. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying by reintroducing Christianity, what I'm saying is, even though they consider themselves to be Christians by reason of history and culture, I'm saying the gospel message has to be presented to them again, so that they will have an opportunity to hear it, understand it, think about it, and decide on it. Mm-hmm.